over there, and they're going to do some activities with you, and you will have the chance to win some Chick-fil-A gift cards if you participate, some McDonald's gift cards if you participate, and some other toys and gift items. So I gave you a heads up that if you maybe ask the first question or share the first answer, you might have a treat waiting for you. So don't go over there sitting there all sullen and quiet like you're not going to participate. You're going to miss out.
That's the vegan Chick-fil-A, by the way.
Now, I saw y'all adults in the second row whispering and getting excited about them gift cards, but you guys have the opportunity to win some gift cards as well by participating. When the panelists go up there, you have the opportunity to ask questions, at the appropriate times. So please do participate, because the question you have might be the same question somebody else has, okay?
So how many of you is from Raleigh, North Carolina? Raise your hands. Or live here. Okay. What about Durham? Okay. Fayetteville, North Carolina? Charlotte? Okay. I think the farthest we've gone is Greensboro? Ooh. I have a gift card for you, but what happened was... Winston-Salem? All right.
Oh, wow. Nice.
Hey, you also in the What Had Happened Club.
Now, are you here just for the program, or are you here with one of the panelists? Oh, Denise! Well, I'm so happy she came.
Awesome.
Wow, we got two from work in the house. Woohoo!
Yeah, great. Well, we're going to have a great time, okay? So we want you guys to be open-minded, participate, and there's going to be some really good information being shared and disseminated. So we want you to really be in tune with what's being shared. Normally, that's stuff you would be paying money for. And now you get these experts in their field and get to share that information. So I think that's really invaluable. So you think it's ready for them to go out, honey?
So yeah, we have a few here still. So you guys can. So let's start with this side right here.
Yeah.
Children, just wait a few minutes, okay? I'll let these
this
adults
section,
go.
you guys can go ahead.
If you want to go through the taste fest, some of you might not want to get up. You might be comfortable in your seat. Other ones might want to go through there. There's fresh strawberries and blueberries.
And then if you stay behind, I'm going to have to do a solo for you. I'm going to sing a song. Oh, everybody got up.
There's coffee. Who needs a boost of coffee right now? There's hot chocolate. Who needs some hot chocolate right now? Now, there is a twist to it. I see some people's looks. When you get over there and look at the instructions or the ingredients, there is a twist about the ingredients. But for now, coffee and hot chocolate is over there. But read the writing. Don't be afraid to taste what's over there, because although the ingredients may sound odd or weird, you might be pleasantly surprised, and you'll learn a thing or two.
I think there's so much we don't know about so many different foods that will be really invaluable for our own learning. So,
Dr. Jones, what do you like to say about food and God's plan in our body? Do you want to take the mic for a second and share?
Hello, everyone. So as Tawana shared, I am a naturopathic doctor, and if you're not familiar with naturopathic medicine, I like to just say it's God's original medicine. So everything that's laid out in Genesis literally is what I assess when I'm looking at patients and clients. I'm looking at, are you sleeping? Because if I could rest, you should be resting. Do you have nutrients in your body? Because you're going to need those nutrients. So there's so many different things that I focus on with my patients. But as far as foods, there's so many nutrients that the body needs for all the different processes we have to do just to function. And then don't even get me started on the brain. Like, the brain requires so much, so we have to make sure that we're not depleted, so we have to be proactive with the foods that we consume. And again, this is all laid out in Scripture.
Thank you, thank you.
As far as the botanicals and the herbs, in Revelation it says, and the herbs will be there for the healing of the nations. So again, when man or when the world has perverted what God has called good, we have to take a step back and say, he created these plants, he created these botanicals, and they act in our body and elicit a response. So it's helpful. So let's just have an open mind. Yes.
Now, you guys further back couldn't hear me talking to our brilliant panelists up front, but one of them was saying how the mushrooms help with bloating and it helps with mental clarity. And so who would have thought, people are grabbing Starbucks coffee and they could have the same thing from a plant that's healthier for you and is a lot cheaper probably if you got the mushroom rather than that other thing. And the other point I was going to make is how much money do we spend on pills and medications? We spend a ton of money on pills and medications, and today we're going to learn how you could just change your diet and save your pocketbook and feel a whole lot better, because a lot of times when you're using medications, I'm not knocking medications, because they do have their role and they're very important, and I'm actually a medical clinician who prescribes medications for certain diseases and things. However, sometimes, as the pastor was preaching today, we are self-inflicting illnesses and things on ourselves. And so if we knew that we could just do some of these natural remedies and change our diet, we'd save a ton of money, be happier people, have better homes, marriages, and relationships. Okay, we see some people coming back. Okay, y'all kids want to make your way over there, and you guys will talk to them about what room you'll be going to for your activities. Good to see you, Sister Johnson. So how did y'all enjoy the Taste Fest? Wow, I'm glad to hear that. Did you learn anything new? You did? You learned something about tea?
I think she called it the butterfly tea. It's on the end. Yes, it's a blue tea. And she said how it was good for the skin and stuff like that. Oh, I'm sorry. She said that it was good for the skin and everything, helps with wrinkles. That's a plus.
Awesome.
So if I start taking that now, I expect to stay pretty
Yeah.
tight.
That's awesome.
She mentioned butterfly. Something, a herb called butterfly was over there for the tea.
Yeah.
That's probably one of my favorite herbs because it's also antiviral. So speaking of COVID, we have different herbs that help elicit different responses. So antiviral, you're supporting your immune system to handle certain viruses. Like the common cold is also a virus. So just being proactive with our health in this manner.
Yeah. That's really good. So I think we're going to learn so much today. And I think we're going to see a lot of these vegetables and fruit. We're going to have probably a different mindset, different perspective about how we digest them or how we use them. Because a lot of it, we didn't grow up eating them or seeing them, right? So now you're going to start looking for them when you go grocery shopping. So I think that's really important.
I agree. And you know what? My husband just made me have a light bulb switch. We have these educational bags for each of you. You passed them on the table in the foyer. I forgot to tell you to grab one. Hi, Renita. So happy you made it. Fayetteville in the house. So anyway, if you guys want to get a bag, or we can have...
We'll have someone pass them out.
Yeah, we'll have them. But there's a tablet in the bag. There's a green and white ink pen that Our Wake County employee graciously supplied the bags and the ink pens, so you can take notes during this session, because she just mentioned butterfly tea.
Oh, pre-made stuff.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can drop it in your bag. They're saying because there's satchels and packets you might want to drop in the bag. But you also have pens to take notes.
And if you haven't had a bag, raise your hand, and Usher is going to pass one out to you right now.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brother Mark. And thank you, Vic.
So some of you guys who are coming back from the Taste Fest, what did you learn something new over there that you'd like to share? Anybody who just came back learned something new from over there?
It's okay, don't be shy.
Now in your bags, sometimes I'm asked, what do I do if there's a crisis? How do I respond to certain mental health concerns? So in your bag, there should be some helpful information that addresses some of the mental health challenges. I'm going to grab a bag myself, honey.
Okay. All right. Do you have a bag? If you don't have one, raise your hand and we'll get you one. Okay. All right, Sister Johnson. Okay.
Anyone else would like a bag? So happy to have family support in the house.
Yeah, I see the Joneses, the rest of the Joneses. Hey, hi.
So in the bag, you have your tablet. So we do hope that you'll take down some notes, because this is really good educational content. These nice pens that are in honor of mental awareness. We have the COVID test in here. We also have how to stop being scared, breaking addictions, and help for loneliness. Did you guys know that loneliness is at epidemic proportions? It's all over the news, right? So there's a pamphlet in your bag that talks about loneliness. And then there's also something about mind, body, health connections. And like I said, you have the opportunity to have some winnings here.
Yeah, but you want to talk briefly about NAMI Walk today? We did earlier today.
Thanks for that reminder.
Yeah, because I was just blown away by this nonprofit organization, how much, well, they have so many things that are free, that are nonprofit, that are available to us as a community. And, whether it's, substance abuse or depression, whatever it is you have, mental health related, they have it. And it's free to you. So I was just blown away by these organizations that you have so many resources willing and these individuals are experts in their field, and they're willing to help our community. You want to share? So you've been doing that for a few years.
Yes, I started about 4 years ago. My husband and I will introduce ourselves in a second, but I practice medicine. I do psychiatry. I'm a psychiatric PA. And I heard about NAMI because I was looking for a resource for my clients to have an extra layer of support. Some of us in the audience may suffer from anxiety, from bipolar disorder, from other substantial mental health challenges, and you feel like you're all alone. And a lot of times you don't know how to navigate getting help. And I found out about the National Alliance on Mental Illness because they have a helpline that's open from, I think, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. And the people who are experiencing distress or need additional information can call the helpline. If you dig a little further, you'll also find out that they have peer-to-peer support offerings. They also are connected to different agencies in the community and can direct you to getting the help that you need. And they provide different educational sessions throughout the year. One time after work in the evening, I got on a webinar, and they had a webinar on how to interact with law enforcement when you're having a mental health emergency, and as brown people, that's very, very important. But I was able to hear some riveting testimonials of what has gone left field when someone was in a mental health crisis and called 911. Now, just so you guys all know, what number are we supposed to call if you have a mental health crisis? 988. Ebony from Greensboro yelled 988. That's right. I heard somebody over here also say it. So if you're feeling a lot of hopelessness, you think you might make a decision and do something you may regret, instead of calling 911, you can call 988. Most of the times in my work, when people feel that way, I just listen to them and talk to them. And usually they're not about to take that action, but they feel like nobody's hearing them, and they need somebody to hear them and affirm them and listen to them. And nothing is needed after we have our conversation. You affirm them, you acknowledge what they're feeling, and then maybe as a team you guys can make next steps, but I don't have to call 911 most of the time, okay? But if you do, you can call 988. So people are coming back, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Yeah. Honey, would you like to quickly introduce yourself?
Okay, 5 seconds. I'm Jean Lodius, and I'm married to my wife, Tawana Lodius. I have 2 kids. I work as a technical account manager for a healthcare organization. I've been in the IT field for many years. I love helping young men who do not have the opportunities that I currently do have, so I try to give back. And also, why am I holding the mic? Because this is definitely an area that hit home for me, because I have a lot of people in my family who have mental health problems. And now I'm married, so I'm safe. But the last part, but as far as education, you're probably curious why this guy's holding the mic. I also have advanced education as well. I have a master's degree, and currently I'm pursuing a PhD in organizational leadership. I'll stop right there.
Thank you, honey, for that 30-second
What about you?
Introduction. I'm Tawana Lodius. I'm Dr. Tawana Lodius. I received a doctorate last year. I went back to school. As I mentioned before, I practice psychiatry. I'm a psychiatric PA. A lot of people aren't familiar with that term. Some are, but I'm a physician assistant. I've been a PA for over 20 years. I know I look very young, but I've been in the field for over 20 years. And I really enjoy doing what I do. I've been in psychiatry for about 7 years, and it was like the best kept secret, because I love what I do, helping people get better. Ebony and I work very closely together. We're a team at work. We do a lot of wonderful things together, helping people live better lives. But as my husband said, we're both family life leaders, and we wanted to recognize mental health as a church event in this year, and our pastor graciously allowed us to have this day. So that's why we're here before you. Now,
and of course, this day wouldn't have been possible without your committee.
Our committee, yes, thanks, honey. We have the Family Life Committee, and we also have, so some of them are in the audience, some of them were in the kitchen cooking, some spent time during the week making up the bags and all that stuff. But we also collaborated with Community Services, who provided these delicious chicken salad sandwiches that were vegan and real chicken. And we have Health and Temperance collaborating as well. Dr. Jones is taking the lead for Health and Temperance for this particular event, but she also works with 2 other ladies that are co-leading Health and Temperance. And one of them is here today and was on our subcommittee.
And if you are in the committee, would you mind raise your hand, give us a wave? Yeah. Thank you very much. We appreciate you guys. Thank you so much.
Now, without further ado, I'd like for the panelists to proceed up front. While they're doing that, we do want to look on the screen, because you'll see some mental health services, and there are links that are available in the community. A lot of people don't know, like if they're grieving, they may know someone who's lost their mother or who's lost their spouse, and they don't know how to access a grief counselor or local grief services. That's on that picture on the screen. Black men. Who loves themselves a black man? Did I ask that right?
Okay.
Who loves a black man?
Yes,
Love a man.
Don't we care about our black men?
Yeah.
All right. right. Well, there's therapy for black men up there on the screen.
Yes.
Now, we usually overwhelm with a lot of females, but the very first one is therapy for females, too. So please pay attention to that. You might want to take a picture and have it as a resource in the future.
Yeah. And we have a couple of panelists that will be joining us as well.
So we can start from this side. I asked them to do a 30-second intro of themselves because they'll give themselves their own justice.
Well, you only give me 5 seconds.
Hello, everyone. Can you all hear me? All right. Let's try that again. Hi, everyone. How are you all doing?
Good.
Good. My name is Shanice Stephenson. I am a licensed clinical mental health counselor, a licensed clinical addiction specialist, and a national certified counselor. So this is my second speaking engagement today. And as I said before when I introduced myself, I am the founder and owner of Pivotal Breakthrough Counseling Services, located in Raleigh, North Carolina. The name Pivotal Breakthrough came from the pandemic, actually. So I did not have a practice before the pandemic, but because of such an increased need and a need to pivot, that's where that first part came from. I actually was sitting in a church when I thought of the second part of my counseling name, where I was spoken directly to in the sense of, you are your biggest breakthrough yet. So that's how I got my name for my practice. But after a while, after doing this for some time, I realized that there is another depth to that, which actually comes from the foundation of where I think of my practice, which is from 1 Peter 5:10, which says that after we have suffered for a while, that God will be able to give us, oh my God, I'm so sorry, y'all. Yes, he will strengthen us and settle us, and also make sure that we are in a place where we can receive him.
Amen. Thank you so much.
Hello, my name is Amanda Mbata Graham. Yes, okay. Amanda Mbata Graham. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I'm the owner and founder of Living Waters Counseling and Wellness Center, located in Raleigh, North Carolina, where we serve various concerns, from anxiety to relationship concerns. Living Waters Counseling and Wellness Center is founded upon John 4:14. We like to be the place where people are able to come, receive what they need, and then go out and pour it into the lives of others. And I'm also the owner and founder of Beyond Brokenness, which is a coaching business where I help women access life beyond the brokenness of their past experiences and help couples access healing beyond attachment trauma.
Amen. Amen.
Good evening, family.
Good evening.
Y'all are here?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Dr. Keith Praler, and I am a naturopathic doctor. I'm an ND. There's an M right here, but I'm an ND. Where I focus on identifying the root causes of illness and helping you to create the conditions for health so that you can be whole. The specific things that I focus on in my specific practice is weight management and stress management, which are two things that are associated with some of the leading causes of death in America, particularly in the Black community. And so I endeavor to create programs and resources for our people so that they can help prevent disease. And so what part of my mission moving forward is to create more, I would say, opportunities to be informal, to address some very deep and persistent issues that we can actually lower some of these, the rates in which we develop chronic diseases. And so that's what I pursue to do. And so next year I'm going to bring out coaching programs and support groups designed to help with weight management. We already know that weight is just a symptom. It is not the actual cause. So obviously there are going to be a lot of different things. A part of my coaching and support groups is going to help you overcome the roots that cause the weight to have, manifest in the way that it does, and also the roots of stress, issues with coping with stress as well. So I said all that to say that I become all things to all men. So whatever setting I'm in, I have to be who it is that God created me to be for that environment. And so as I'm filling the room, make sure that you guys become as open as you need to so that you can receive all the goodness of the Lord.
Amen. Amen.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay? So my name is Ebony Nolan. I am a licensed clinical social worker. I currently work at Landmark Health, where I'm a behavioral health care manager. I work specifically with our members that might be struggling with symptoms of depression and anxiety, grief and loss, having trouble adjusting to their current circumstances, and or issues with substance use. As a licensed clinical social worker, I have a significant amount of experience working particularly with people with severe and persistent mental health concerns. I'm very passionate about addressing mental health. I think especially in the Black and brown community, oftentimes there's stigma associated with talking about mental health. And so one of my goals is to develop my own private practice in which I can work specifically with young and old Black men, because I think they really, like, we know Black women, Black people need support, but I think that there's an opportunity to really help to make connections when it comes to Black and brown boys and men, with just helping them to be able to openly express their thoughts, their feelings, and to, at the end of the day, have really healthy relationships. So yeah, thanks.
I like that.
Hello. I'm Dr. Brianna Jones. I'm a naturopathic doctor. Thank you again, y'all, for the opportunity to speak with you. I am the owner of Well Wellness Naturopathic Care, and so I give clinical care, coaching, and consulting services. And specifically, I love to work with cardiometabolic disease, people that have cardiometabolic disease. So this can look like heart disease and its derivatives, or it can look like insulin resistance, which we would see as like type 2 diabetes or PCOS. And so I too have a huge love for connecting stress and the clinical conditions, and how does stress impact the body, and how do we see that manifested through those particular conditions. And so I love tying scripture back to the body. I believe God is very consistent and intentional about calling the body his bride. And so the more we know about our physical bodies, the more that we can be impactful as the spiritual body.
Amen.
Amen.
Good afternoon, church. My name is Randolph Brooks, and I wouldn't be here without my wife. So you talked about, Tawana talked about loving a good Black man. I love this good Black woman right here. We are, and we are the co-owners of Brooks Psychological Services, licensed in Massachusetts, Connecticut, and North Carolina. We work with individuals in transition and individuals dealing with symptoms consistent with like imposter syndrome, like, you know, like I don't belong in a certain space even though you've earned your spot in that particular space. And really what we look at as, you know, we may call it imposter syndrome, but you know, it's racism. But the point being, the idea that that stress, as everyone's been bringing up, that stress that carries with you, and you're thinking, I'm not good enough, maybe I don't belong here. In actuality, no, you're dealing with this racist environment or these racist microaggressions that are causing you to think that you don't belong in the place that you actually do belong. And you carry that with you day in and day out, it adds up. Now, along with that, I also am an assistant director at North Carolina State University in the Counseling Center.
Amen, amen. I want to do something. If you're looking at the entire panel, these are young, professional, Black young women. Give them a hand. And we have more in the audience. We have some doctors in the audience as well. We have a lot of success. Well, I appreciate you guys being here today. But the thing that kind of struck a nerve for me, long time ago, when you would have, when a church, I would say Black church would have a program like this, what you would have is our counterpart that's telling us about things we need to do. But guess what? We get to tell ourselves those things. So give yourself a hand. So I am so proud of each and every one of you and for the contributions you are making for your community, and I can't wait to see what else you're going to do. So thank you.
Praise God. Thank you. Amen. So what we're going to do is our program is separated into 3 parts, okay? The first part that we're going to talk about is what is mental health. So I'd like to start with a few of the panelists to share what they'd like you to understand about mental health. What is mental health? Now, after a few of them share, we're going to invite you guys to ask a question, but try to stay under that umbrella of what is mental health, because we have 2 other sections that we'll move to after we talk about this particular one. So what is mental health? Let's have a person from this table and a person from that table to get started.
Whoever's comfortable.
So hi again, everybody. So mental health is our social, psychological, and also our physical abilities when we think about what we're trying to do when we have mental illness. So when we think about mental health, all those aspects connected together is what makes us up as people, but what also help us to relate to other people, that help us to connect with other people, but also how we find coping skills, and then also identifying our triggers too. So it's a large part of what we do, but how we also do the things that we do.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there another?
Table 2, anyone want to volunteer?
I'll say from a naturopathic standpoint, I love being able to see how the mind and the body and the spirit are all connected. So where one is lacking, the others will also lack. So what I would say mental health is making sure that your mind, body, and spirit are congruent. Because when we see the mental health standpoint, like lacking, what has not been addressed in the body? Because most of the times what we see going on in the mind, we're struggling in the body, or our traumas or whatever is manifesting in the body. So making sure that we're congruent with all 3. And just once we get an understanding of that, we'll start to see how we can start to truly heal the mind.
Thank you both for volunteering. I think that by the time you leave this program tonight, everybody should realize that we are multifaceted. Yes. So it's not just anxiety, and we're only going to look at this anxious feeling. We're also going to look at the whole person as they're talking about. So who has a question? Because I'd like to know who's brave enough to ask these experts a question under what is mental health topic. Does anyone have a question for them?
Raise your hand, we'll pass the mic to you.
Yes, thank you for taking my question. My question is to the gentleman on the far right. Earlier when you introduced yourself, you said that sometimes as men, particularly as black men, we feel like we don't belong. Could you expound on that, please?
Well, thank you for the question. Now, when we talk about feeling like you don't belong, oftentimes we find ourselves in a particular space and you see the eyes are on you. You feel the eyes are on you. And sometimes we may try to trick ourselves into saying, it's just in my head. You know, it's nothing to worry about. But reality is, they actually are on you. And so the idea behind finding where you belong, it's, as Tawana is bringing up, it's multifaceted. In one case, for example, if you're at work, do you feel like your job actually values your contributions? When you're at work, do you actually have people that you can go to and talk to about the stress that you are experiencing at work? The same thing happens at home. Do we feel as though we can go talk to the people in our own homes about what's going on outside of the house? And when we think about just the notion of feeling isolated, because I don't feel as though I can talk to anybody, that's when you start seeing those more significant mental health symptoms start to emerge, because you're holding all this stress. You're holding all this anxiety. You're holding, the slight at work. You're holding the skipped over promotion. You're holding on to that, so where are you actually from? You're holding on to just what happened in the legislature a couple of days ago. So you went to Harvard, Did you get into Harvard because you're an athlete?
Yeah, yeah.
You got here into this position. You know you're a diversity hire, right? We hold on to those things. We hold on to that. Now, when we talk about getting into therapy, the point of therapy is being able to talk some of that stuff out, being able to learn how to let it go. We hold on to our stress, and specifically for a lot of men, we feel as though we cannot express that. We feel as though I have to hold all of this because I can't give it to my wife. Or me and my boys, we talk about sports. We don't talk about that. We don't talk about our feelings. We're not taught to talk about our feelings. Talking about your feelings, it's because you're soft.
Yes.
As opposed to being able to understand, just as Dr. Jones, yes, I'm sorry, just as Dr. Jones was bringing up, everything is connected. So when you're not talking about your feelings and you're holding all that in, it's building and building, and either it's going to be released in some sort of explosion, or it may turn into something physical.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
And I think also a lot of that stem from the belonging you're talking about for black men has something to do with our upbringing, our community, the culture we grew up in. Because some culture, when the child does something, they're like 3-4 years old. Oh, you just like your daddy, right? Or you just like your mommy. And this child, grows up and thinking that same way. And then doesn't matter how successful they are, they're like, I'm just like my daddy. I'm just like my mommy. And then it takes a lot of work to break that cycle and that mindset. So that belonging he's speaking of also stemmed from that as well. Thank you, Doctor.
Is there another question from the audience? Go ahead, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Faith. I am a mental health advocate and a YouTuber, and I'm going to be going to school to pursue Christian counseling and life coaching for those who suffer from schizophrenia or dissociative identity disorder. My question is, what is mental health? I know there's a connection between mental health and, like you said, the spirit. Why do you think that that mental health and being a spiritual thing, we don't treat, a lot of places you go, they don't treat the spiritual aspect of things, and nothing, it doesn't get like healed, So why do you think that they ignore the spiritual aspect of things, especially like big medicine and stuff like that?
Thank you so much for that question. I think it's an awesome question. I feel like in my experience as a social worker, the way that we're taught, the things that we're taught, and how we're taught to sort of approach questions, approach different topics, right? We're taught to sort of broach topics like spirituality, death and dying, health and wellness, right? Education, transportation, all sorts of things. And so I work with an interdisciplinary team that includes doctors, nurses, social workers, amongst other professionals. And what I've learned is that their teaching can be distinctly different. And so there are, like, in some professionals, deficits, right? And I feel like oftentimes in the helping professions, right, like we sort of have that knowledge to be able to incorporate those things. For me, I grew up in the church, and so I feel a little bit more comfortable just talking to individuals that express their spirituality. But I also feel like with like doctors and medical things, they're sort of trying to get down to the root of whatever it is that's presenting. And maybe they don't necessarily like touch on all of the different things that could be impacting us, right? Like social workers look at things like the whole person, right? We're not just looking at your social determinants of health and how your finances are going. We're also asking questions about your medical health as well as your spirituality as well as your mental health, right? We want to address the issues that the whole person is having. But I feel like with a lot of other professionals, right, they're focused on that specific issue within their wheelhouse. So medical is medical. Behavioral health, they touch on some other things, but that has been my experience.
I'd like to add to what she's saying. I think the biggest thing in this side of the world is just the culture has separated spirit from the body, and that is how our culture has derived their healing practices, as though it is distinctly different, despite it being interconnected. When you go over to the eastern side of the world, spirituality is a huge component of their healing practices. So it has a lot to do with us being American, and in America, who endeavor to separate spirit, we say church, from state. So it kind of is a form of, it's by design. Our Constitution has designed it to be an environment where you separate your spirit man from the rest of your body.
And I would also like to add that, especially in medicine, we like to make sense of things. We like to be able to quantify. And when you can't quantify the spirit, you can't really quantify the spirit. You can't make sense of it. And so when you don't understand something, you invalidate it, or you call it, hoo-hoo, and, all this kind of stuff. And that's when we start to get into, what are they engaging in? Like, what's going on, So I would say from a clinical standpoint, it's hard to really do research on the spirit. And I think that's by God's, design, because we want so much knowledge and information, and then there's some things that he leaves as a mystery. And so we have to be okay with not always understanding what's going on in the spiritual realm, but we know that it does elicit a physiological impact in the body. It influences the mind and the body.
I'd like to add a comment, because that was an excellent question, so I thank you for asking that question. Our job had a clinician summit this past week, and this was the first time I was able to attend a session for medical clinicians on addressing the spiritual needs of the clients that we serve. And the presenter was saying how if a client asks you for prayer or brings that part up in your interaction with them, if you're comfortable, it's okay to kind of explore that a bit. And I'm a Christian, so I don't tell them I'm a Christian, but they can sense I'm a Christian. And sometimes I've been asked, do you mind praying for me? I feel comfortable with prayer, so I don't mind praying with my clients. And, healing from that angle, if that's what's important to them. But you also have to realize a lot of practicing clinicians, they may not have that spiritual background and spiritual education where they feel comfortable addressing those needs. And that's why we all have to work together as a team to provide patient-centered care. It's nice when companies have chaplains on their staff. They have pastoral staff. They have rabbis and other religious leaders from different faiths. That helps address what the patient needs. That's wonderful, but that's still slow to come. That's my add on as moderator. Now we have the opportunity for one more question.
Yeah, I think mine is, I wanted to just get their point of view very quickly. I think I'm well put together, right? Okay. Would you assume that I have mental health because I'm well put together? Right? Because sometimes it's about perception, right? We on the outside, the person look extremely polished, they're like, oh, they got their lives, they're good, right? But can you identify mental health externally by just the external appearance? So I wanted you guys to kind of expound on that very quickly, for those of you who are comfortable discussing that, because we somehow assume that mental health is somebody sitting on the corner, look really shabby, and they kind of depressed looking. But some of those individuals that are very influential are suffering from mental health issues, and some of them have died by suicide, and people are extremely shocked. So I just wanted you to kind of expound on that by the external appearance of someone.
And we say mental health, but mental illness and mental health.
Mental illness, correct.
Yeah, I was going to say that, as you were saying, mental health, everyone in here has mental health. So it is on a spectrum, right? And even when we look at different disorders such as like anxiety, let's just say major depressive disorder, we can have those things also on a spectrum. It doesn't mean that you're suffering in the same way as someone else. And so if you're put together and you're suffering on the inside, you continue to be put together, you continue to wear a mask, eventually it will begin to show up on the outside in one way or another, either in the way that you relate to others, or it will show up in the way that you take care of yourself. Maybe you're not doing the same activities you used to do. Maybe you're withdrawing from your relationships. Maybe you're not dressing the way you used to dress. And so it will show up in various aspects of your life, but just sitting here looking at all of you, no one would just assume that you have major depressive disorder or that you're struggling with, I don't know, any other disorder that you've ever heard of. So no, we can't just judge a book by its cover, and that's why we have to be so connected with our communities so that and when I say communities, I mean our interpersonal relationships, so that the people who are closest to us in proximity know when we are suffering, even if we're not showing it on the outside.
Thank you. A short one.
Elder Smith, Brother Smith, you stood up and want to interject. Let me give you a prize for your boldness, okay? The brother stood up and want to ask a question. Yours says take a deep breath as well, so relieve some stress.
I thought you had a dollar sign on it. $5 or something on it. But at any rate, briefly, it's a segment, an element that I want to discuss, twofold about this. About the military, PTSD. I don't know, I'm jumping the gun on that. But seeing my experience, that's seen about like a component that we continue to leave out about military veterans. I don't know if there's someone on the panel that can be discussing that. But my experience as a veteran and as a retired member of the military, that sometimes we kind of overlook that and it's not addressed because it's an element that's really effectively not only the member, but the family and the children and also the community. Suicidal, depression, and also the community as well. So there's a lot of things happening that we don't discuss that. It's kind of like taboo. And another thing, I was doing some research on this, not actual research, but school avoidance with the kids. I have really a soft heart for children, but the kids now, they have something called school avoidance, but the child don't want to go to school. And one incident that happened when the police came to the school, came to the person's home, and they not arrested the child because the child had a weapon, a gun, but made the child go to school because the child don't want to go to school because they have depression and they don't feel safe because with this crime going on in the school system, kids are getting shot, and they don't want to go to school. And the parents now at home, because they're working from home with COVID and all that kind of stuff, right? So now the authorities come to the home and making the child go to school, and the child don't want to go to school. So how is that been taught in the school, in social work, or in the realm of education? How do that affect the family and the mom there with the child every day, and the child feeling comfortable at home with the mom or the parent because the parent's at home working? How is that affecting the society as a whole, or the family circle? There's two questions there. So
yes, I understood two
that?
questions.
Shortly, can you give a brief answer? What are we doing first of all with the veterans? PTSD, how does it affect not only for the veterans, but that's society all around?
Dr. Brooks is prepared to answer.
Yes, when you think about PTSD specifically, because there was a lot right there. When you think about PTSD specifically, we have to think of it in the sense of people experiencing things that we're not supposed to experience. People. Yeah, post-traumatic stress disorder, yes. Post-traumatic stress disorder. And the idea behind post-traumatic stress disorder is people experiencing things that they should not experience. That's not a part of God's design to experience that much trauma at one time, well, period, really, but even at just one time in your life. And when you start having some of the more classical symptoms, such as flashbacks, heart racing, symptoms in which you can no longer function the way you used to, or the way you're trying to function. The idea behind PTSD, it's something that we've seen going all the way back to World War I, calling it shell shock. So we've heard that term, and now as we modernize it, we start to recognize it's not just in war. We have people around us just in life. You know, something as simple as a car accident, not wanting to go down that same street anymore, not wanting to be in the car, yes. You know, intimate partner violence. So now I can't go to this particular house, or I can't be around these particular people. I can't be in this situation again. That's really the point of PTSD, wanting to avoid these particular situations, or even what may appear to be that same type of situation. The issue that we have with PTSD, though, is now happening so often in quote-unquote normal activities of life. You should not have to be scared to walk down the street. These children that you're bringing up going to school, you should not have to be scared going to school. And even now, even if a tragedy did not happen at your school, just because you're asking me to go to school is being so closely connected to school itself. It's getting harder and harder for children to go to school and feel safe. You're always having, active shooter drills, and now seeing it as a reality of life. Back in the day, we had fire drills, we had tornado drills, but there wasn't a fire ever. There wasn't a tornado ever. But the reality is, school shootings, it really could happen right next. Yeah, no, when you're talking about actual treatment for PTSD, when you're talking about actual treatment.
Hold on. Okay, all right, let's give it a minute. Go ahead, doctor.
Yeah, we're actually talking about particular sorts of treatments for school avoidance. In many cases, it is being able to be the parent with your child going to school. That's the first step. And go ahead. No, because you're right.
I'm sorry, I said advocate. As the parent, right, it's your job to advocate for your child. So if your child is expressing to you that they are really scared about going back to school, they have concerns about going back to school, they're experiencing heart palpitations or whatever it is, right, the parent can go to the school, maybe consider connecting the kid with a counselor, right? It's going to be important for that child to talk to someone. And so they could potentially do that at the school. They could do that through health insurance. But the first step, I think, would be the parent advocating on behalf of the child. This is what's happening. These are the concerns that they're expressing. This is what we're trying to do. So we're trying to connect them to counseling, to get to talk to somebody so that they can feel more comfortable, but right now we need to figure out other options, right? So is that my kid is going virtually versus coming in person, or is that my kid comes, we come and we pick up work, but as the parent, you gotta advocate for your kid.
And that's with both the teacher and the principal and the school board, so it can't just be one person. Oftentimes we have this conversation with this person that I know, but sometimes it goes above that person. So talk to the principal, talk to the school board, and just recognize that this is not the sort of thing that goes away overnight. It didn't start overnight, it's not going to go away overnight.
I have to interject because we are getting some really good information and back and forth, so I appreciate that dialogue. One comment that I need to interject as our youth are over there in the youth program, as we were planning the activities that we were going to do with the young people, because we do have licensed clinical social workers over there, as well as some other staff working with our young people. But one of the ladies who works with our youth at church was saying how in our Black culture, we need to allow our children the space to express what they're experiencing and what they're feeling. And culturally growing up, it's about respect so much. What tone of voice are you using to me? You don't even hear the content of what's being said. You hear that tone first. And so we need to kind of change that framework around parenting and try to listen more and provide safe spaces for our kids first to communicate what they're feeling and what they're experiencing. And then you can be a better advocate for your child with knowing what specifically are the needs. So we get to stop on that heavy topic right now, because that is some heavy stuff. We love our children and we love our men, these soldiers who are serving, and we have beautiful Tanisha Brooks coming up. Do your 30-second.
30 seconds.
No. I was saying about your introduction.
Okay. Good evening. Happy Sabbath. I think my husband did a great job introducing me earlier. My name is Tanisha Brooks. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I am a co-owner, co-founder of Brooks Psychological Services, where I provide therapy, virtual therapy, to adults, professionals, and students who are struggling with transitions, imposter syndrome, and needing to regain their confidence. So it's a little snippet of what I do. But today, what I'm doing is I'm sharing a mindful moment with us all here. Now, how many of you have heard the term mindfulness before? Okay, could somebody tell me what it means?
Being in the moment.
Being in the moment. Okay. Being present in the moment. Fabulous. That's exactly what it means. I know that a lot of times we hear mindfulness in the context of meditation or Eastern meditation or Eastern practices, but it's actually a very biblical concept, the idea of being present and staying in the moment. The Bible verse that we have up on the screen, be still and know I am God, Psalm 46 verse 10, is a verse about being mindful, right? And being aware that God is with us in all of our situations. And so we are going to learn a few mindful practices, and these can be applied when you're feeling anxious, worried, stressed out, angry, basically anything that's gonna, elevate your heart rate, anything that's gonna make you feel out of control. And so these practices can help you kind of calm down and feel a little more back to yourself. And it can create some space for you to do things that may be more helpful. So it creates some space to maybe be able to pray and focus on praying about what's going on. It can give you a little space to think about, okay, what might be a strategy that I can use to get out of the situation or to kind of fix what's going on. And so these can be very helpful when we recognize that we're just kind of spiraling out of control. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is breathing. We're going to go to our next slide. And so the breath is so important, but how many of us really are sitting around thinking about our breathing, right? Like, breathing is just one of those processes that we just go through day in and day out. Hopefully we're going through it day in and day out, and we don't have to think about it. But when we're stressed out, when we're anxious, our breath is one of the first things that can start to heighten with our heart rate going up as well. And our autonomic nervous system has a great, just a great way of just carrying on with all the functions that we don't even think about. And it's also controlling our breathing. And so when we're in these situations when we feel like we need to, run away, we feel like there's danger and we need to run, or we feel stuck and like we're frozen, our body is already taking care. It's already automatically going into these cycles. And so what can be helpful is to take a moment and take a deep breath. And these are, what I'm going to teach you is something that can be helpful with your kids. So when they're feeling stressed out, or when they're, even the little ones, when they're tantruming, well, maybe not right at the time they're tantruming, but you can teach them so that they can use it the next time to help them calm down. So the first one that I want to teach you is a simple breathe in and breathe out. So you can either close your eyes or you can keep them open. It's up to you. I'm going to close them. And you're just going to breathe in and breathe out. And breathe in and breathe out. So what's something, an observation, how are you feeling after just simply a couple of deep breaths? Relaxed. Anything else? Calm. Okay, so just the simple practice of paying attention to our breath and just breathing a little deeper can really help us to feel calm. So this exercise, you hold out your hand and you can practice breathing in and breathing out. Can you hold this for me while okay. So hold out your hand and you use your other finger, and this is really great for kids because they love the tactile piece of it. And so you're just gonna breathe in as you're going up your finger, and then breathe out as you're coming back down. And breathe in while you're going up, and breathe out when you're coming down. And breathe in while you're going up, and breathe out while you're going down. And in, and out, and in, and out. So if you're, stressed out, that can be a really quick and easy one. You can do in and out, yes. And you can also pause at the top of your finger and just hold it for a few counts and breathe out. That also helps. So I'll leave you with that. If you're in a place where you can't just have your hand out and trace it, because that kind of looks weird, then you can just count for the count of 5, right? So you're breathing in. Yes, you're breathing in for a count of 5. You're holding for a count of 5, breathing out for a count of 5, holding for a count of 5, and doing that cycle over and over again. And that can be helpful to calm down. So I will see you after our next little segment for another tip, another strategy that can help us be calm.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Tanisha.
How are you feeling? For those of you who tried it, how are you feeling? Is that good? Please don't go in your conference room on Monday and tell your work, hey, stick your fingers out. It will not go well.
Honey,
okay?
I disagree because I learned about this in actually a business meeting. A lady did it. And I came home, guys, and for family worship, our family just goes left field for family worship, and we're on 10 for family worship. So I introduced this during family worship. They didn't want to do it. They said, honey, mommy, what is this? What are we doing with our hands? And then they did it, Tanisha, and they loved it. They said, honey, that was good.
It's a process. You don't just jump in.
I understand. Well, we get to move on because we have 2 more segments that are really great topics. Right now, we're going to talk about burnout, grief, and suicidality. But before we jump into that, I'd like for you each to know that I had to learn about a lot of different stuff because of the NAMI walk, a lot of different statistical data about mental illness because of the NAMI walk. And I just want you guys to realize that it usually takes 11 years of a delay between the onset of mental illness symptoms and treatment. So that means 11 years of someone's life not being at its fullest potential because they're not diagnosed properly and receiving treatment. So it just fills my heart with joy to see so many people here to hear this important information we're presenting this afternoon. And the other thing I'd like to do before we jump into our next segment is Maria Gabriel is going to come up and she's going to do a giveaway.
Ooh.
All right, can we all get a ticket? She didn't do it. Who didn't get a ticket? But I bet you got lunch. So while we're doing this, we want to kind of do some quick thank yous on behalf of Wake County and give you guys some statistics about here in the Southeast Raleigh area, also within, these are the ones we're going to keep getting. Also to give you some understandings of why we are doing a lot of this health education, outreach, all the food distributions, and other activities that you're seeing that the church is doing. How important is it that not only are you feeding people on a second Sabbath and Saturday, for those who are not familiar with the word Sabbath, there's a food distribution here. And all you have to do is drive your car. No questions, you pop the trunk, they load it up, right? And we're looking at ways to not only feed the community mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. So the church has partnered with Wake County on various different programs. We have community-led programs, but we also have some internal programs to the church. So some of you came in and saw I was sitting over here with a group of young people. So if your kid is this small, they go that way. But when they get to be about this size and they're about 10 years old, they get to come over to that side, and it's called Pathfinders. And what Pathfinders is think of Boy Scout, Girl Scout, but way better and an amazing staff, right? And we're better looking. But this is open to any youth between the ages of 10 all through high school. And it's teaching your children leadership. It's teaching your children how to respect themselves. It's teaching them how to respect others. It's teaching them how to have discipline. And often when we relate to what's happening in the schools, and by the way, yes, I get to work with a lot of your kids in the school, and y'all don't know half the stuff your kids are doing in school. I'm on their social media. But a lot of this is because they're competing for other children to like them, right? And you say, well, I go to church. I'm a holier-than-thou parent. I'm a vegan. So my kids have to be all that I say that they are. But yet, a lot of the kids that I work with are suffering so bad from depression, and a lot of them are sitting right next to you in church as you pass them and say Happy Sabbath or Happy Sunday or whatever day of the week you meet them at your church. But do you know how many of your young people are contemplating suicide because they can't talk to you? Do you know how many of your young people are asking for prayers, but they don't know how to say it, and you don't like the way they say it? So when they show up and they look a little different, or they haven't been to church for a long time, or you haven't seen them at the Boys and Girls Club for a long time, and you badger them about where they've been, I know who I work for, but I know who I work for. Give God praise that they showed up. Stop worrying about what you can't control, and understand our young people are under attack. I asked my young people, and a parent came over and asked me, did I have permission to say what I said? The fact that you have to ask permission to speak to your children in real life means that me and you need to have a conversation outside. So my question to my young people is, have you ever been in a place or been around your friends and did something that you know your parents wouldn't be happy about? And they were over there raising their hands, and I was like, don't look around. Say it to your imaginary friend. I said, any of y'all smoke weed? Any of y'all hit that vape? And that offended an adult. What should be offensive to you is that you don't know what a vape is and you don't know what weed is. And you should understand that why I said that to them, because I smoked it before, and I understood it had nothing to do with anybody else. It was part of a culture, right? And that's just who I grew up. But if you are so worried about someone talking to your children about what you're not talking to them about, and then you want to know why Holly Hills and all these other places are filled up, drop the attitude and stop, and let's be real. When your children are asking you. So I know the person is going to be agitated because the person loves me, but know that I'm saying this publicly, because if you got offended and you know me, if it offended anybody else, it was because there was a young person in that group that's dealing with a demon. And it's a demon. It's a demon. Call it what you want. Mental health has its place, and we have to be aware the difference between behavior and mental health. We have to be aware of that difference. So parents, please don't get mad when you hear us talk real talk to your kids. Everybody got a ticket, right? And I didn't cheat. I stuck somebody's ticket in my pocket. I'm sorry. Hold on, y'all. It was his. Oh, shoot. Sorry. It's here. Hold on. It's here. Oh, and if you like my embroidery on my shirt, my sister did it, and she has a tailoring shop. We like to promote businesses while we're doing this, so. All right, so for the first prize, Ticket number 771146. 771146. You got 47? That's a good number. Hold on. 771169. So what they have won is a gift card for a wonderful $50, and which is being donated to the Pathfinder Club. And not because we think they're cheating, but can you please repeat your numbers? Because we would hate to know that that couple, married couple, is rigged. What's your last two digits? Woo-hoo! Thank you, guys, and that was from Wake County.
Awesome. Yeah. So, just while we transition to the next part, so here are a few statistics for you about mental health. Oh, how many of you have heard of the term BIPOC? BIPOC community, right? Black, indigenous, people of color, right? So it says Black Americans are 20% more likely to experience serious mental health problems than the general population, according to the Health and Human Services Office of Minority Health. Native American and Alaska Native youth have the highest rate of suicide among all racial ethnic groups in the U.S. Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders are less likely to seek mental health treatment than other racial ethnic groups, according to Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services. And then lastly, Latino and Hispanic Americans are more likely to experience depression and anxiety than non-Hispanic whites, according to the National Institute of Mental Health. So these are some serious problems. So, and when we talked about mental health problems, it's not something that based on your color, it doesn't matter what your color is. All of us can experience this. All of us are going through it, no matter how well we think we are.
Thank you, honey. I'm going to save my moderator piece for a little bit further in the program. Right now, I'd like to ask the panelists as we go into our next segment to first, if you could tell what is burnout? Because you hear a lot about everybody's experiencing burnout these days, right? We used to hear burnout at the beginning of the pandemic with our first responder healthcare workers, right? Now, everybody's, you go to get you something to eat, the waitress even don't want to serve you, she's experiencing burnout. So anyway, tell me, what does that mean to you guys on the panel, burnout? From a mental health perspective, what does that encompass, burnout?
I like to think of burnout as you literally do not have anything left to give. So you've given and given and given until you have nothing left. And this can be in a space of work. This can be in a space with even your family. So I don't want you to think about burnout as only related to work and the things that we feel like we get paid to do or have to do, but it can also take place in relationships. And that's what my focus generally is when I work with my clients, because the reality is the relationships you have with others are often impacting your individual life and your individual experiences. And so when we experience burnout individually, whether it's at work or with family, something is going on inside of us that's telling us, hey, you need to slow down. You need to get help. You need to talk to a friend. And so what we have to do is begin to listen to those signals so that we're not pushing our needs to the side while continuing to pour out, especially from an empty cup.
And I'd just like to add that it is when you have exceeded your capacity mentally and emotionally for your experience in whatever domain you're in.
Great answer. I love that answer. And that makes me wonder about kids. Can our children be experiencing burnout?
Yes.
Yes. Now Now, anyone from this table like to weigh in on burnout before we bring it to the audience for any particular questions?
Well, I just felt like similar to them. Burnout is when you are just continuing to pour from an empty cup, right? Like you just don't have it, and it, like they said, could be in any particular situation. So it doesn't have to be just like your work, but anywhere maybe you have obligations to. You could get burnt out from listening to that friend that is always complaining about the same exact thing, right? Like burnout can look a myriad of different ways, and you can experience it in a lot of different situations that you find yourself in. But I think it's really important to make sure that you're doing the things for yourself to fill yourself up so that you can sort of counteract all that you're giving.
Thank you for those shares.
Yeah. Any questions? Because I was thinking that while you guys were talking, that burnout can also stem from unresolved issues, right? You haven't addressed them. Now you have all this stuff added onto you, work responsibility, families, right? So those things within that, they have to be addressed first, because I think those can further exacerbate that burnout. Yeah. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. Imagine having so much unresolved trauma inside of you, trying to show up at work at your best capacity, trying to show up for your family at the best capacity while you have these unresolved issues. You're not going to be able to show up in the way that you really want to. And then there comes a further less self-compassion because you're disappointed in yourself and you feel like others are disappointed in you. So now you have this feeling on the inside that you're not giving enough when really you're giving all that you have to give.
And it can be expressed in like detachment from who you are and yourself. So you can be still doing a lot of work, but you don't even know who you are anymore because you're experiencing an exhaustion of what you did have in your tank. And so now you're just trying to do the motions of things, and you're good at doing the motions, but you're terrible at having an awareness about where you truly are, and you haven't really checked the temperature, and the temperature is telling you, hey, I'm exceeding what I can handle. And even to express that you're exceeding what you can handle can sometimes be an indication that you're trying to avoid identifying what those issues are. And so now you have all these other issues presenting in your body, in your mind, in your life, and you're trying to run away from it in different type of ways. And so you can escape, and it can lead to indulgence in other areas. It can get into addiction, and all these other practices can start to arise as a result of you not having enough in your tank.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for that. We're going to take some questions from the audience.
So it's not really necessarily a question, but I feel like when you have burnout, sometimes you might, when you experience burnout, it might mean that spiritually it might be time for a change. Sometimes you're in a season where you continue to do something and you've outgrown that space, that you continue to do what you were doing before. You're exceeding what you're doing before, but that environment can't really take what you're given, so you feel like you're giving more but not receiving anything else.
So it's like you need to transition to something else because maybe you're not valued anymore, or you don't feel like what you're contributing is valued. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's good. That's healthy for recognize you in that space, right?
I think, like she said, it's important to make sure that you're checking back in with yourself, right? Because oftentimes, like, things are going in, and maybe we're not checking the temperature to see, like, whatever it is, right? So when you find yourself in that circumstance, right, there are some questions you need to be asking yourself, right? Like, is this situation that I'm in, is it no longer viable? Like, what are my options here, and how do I move forward? So I think it's really important to make sure that we're checking back in with self, as well as those people who are important to us, to make sure that we're recognizing what's happening in the moment and how we can proceed from there.
I was just going to say.
Good evening, everyone. So I realized that I experienced CPTSD and recently have healed from that. And as an educator, I see a lot of that in my students. And so my question to you is, how important is mental health services for children, and what do you suggest that looks like?
I think mental health services are vital for all of us, right? I like to remind myself, I have a son, he's 9, that he's a person, right? He's not just a kid, he's a person as well, right? And so there are things that impact them as well. Like that gentleman mentioned, the kid who is not comfortable going back to school, right, because of the trauma that he experienced. So I think it's really important to identify children are people, right? They have feelings, they experience things. They're going to have situations that maybe prompt some mental health concern as well. And so I think the same way that you might address a parent's mental health concerns, right, you consider your options. So is it talking to a therapist? Like, is it talking to the pediatrician to figure out what sorts of things you might be able to connect them to? Is it getting them involved in like an after school activity, soccer or something like that, that could sort of help to build, you know, them up and practice whatever skills or whatever it is that they're interested in. So it can look like addressing your mental health concerns doesn't necessarily have to be you talking one-on-one to somebody. It can look different for everybody, right? Addressing your mental health could be being mindful of what you're eating, right? And making sure that you're providing your kid with nutritious meals, right? Like, yeah, we want to give them candy and stuff, but making sure that they're having their greens, they're eating their whatever. So talking to somebody, making sure that they have their nutrition, getting exercise, all of that adds to your mental wellness.
And when you think about the way therapy may occur when you're when you're dealing with children, there are myriad of different modalities: play therapy, expressive art therapy. Oftentimes for adults, therapy looks like we're sitting in a room and you're talking back and forth. And that works great for many adults, but when it comes to children, you're not going to get a 10-year-old or a 5-year-old to talk to you in the same way in a room, looking at each other just like that. But once children get into play, once children get into using their hands, they're a little bit more distracted, but that also opens them up to talking about some of those things that they didn't want to talk about before, or some of those things that they felt as though they could not talk about before.
I was just going to say, self-imposed, unimposed stress. Sometimes we create storm for ourselves. I think Pastor mentioned something today that was very important, and about how you take on other baggage, other folks' stuff. And I recall when I was practicing social work. I was a social worker by second career, and I was trying to take on everybody else's problems. I was in family social work, you know, and I was trying to save the world, and I figured I was killing myself trying to, in the process, and bring the stuff home and staying late and trying to, you know, do stuff like that. But what happened is sometimes I think you have to ID what's causing the problem, and I was in denial. So I think when you get denial, you know, you just kind of zone yourself out with the reality of what is. So I think, you know, first and foremost, you have to kind of identify that it is what it is, and stop trying to be denial. And then kind of seek help, because then actually family and friends, your associate, say, how do I look? You know, how am I doing? Because sometimes, you know, you could the expression in your face, physical, mental, all that other stuff going on, you know, and it's how you're changing, how you get on the edge. And I got too close to the edge, and I was looking over. You look over the edge, you can't see the bottom. Then you know you got some problem. So I was on the edge. Yeah. So in that regard, I think you know, help us identify who you are. So I get long-winded because that's why I just do a lot of talking, not listening. So thank you.
We'll take one more comment, and then we'll have to move. Oh, well, we'll take 2 more comments, and then we have to move on.
Okay. Am I? Okay. As far as burnout, burnout comes when we are in denial, and we sometimes think that we're superhuman. You burn out when you've poured out so much and not been refilled. We recognize that an automobile requires gasoline. Eventually, it's going to run out and put you down. Your body will do the same. I work as a chaplain at Wake Med and at Rex, and this last unit I did in the behavioral health unit. And when you are engaging mental health, your mind cracks probably shortly after the body does. It's got to come out some form or fashion. When you have worn yourself out, when you've worn yourself so thin that you are running off of fumes. And then there's, as African American, we are too prideful to ask for help or say, I can't do anymore. We just run ourselves till we run ourselves in the ground. When you look at mental health, from my observation at the hospital, it is physical, mental, and spiritual. If you don't find some way to replenish yourself, your mind and your body is going to crash. It's not one or the other. And what I've learned from dealing with even family members with mental illness is that, and what the Lord has also showed me, that it's most of the time it's dual diagnosis. So when you're in a medical facility, they are sedating the patients. And we do require, some are just chemical imbalances that some medication will kind of help at least put you on a level playing field that now the spiritual can work. But sometimes they're so medicated that the spiritual, they're like in a zombie state. So sometimes if you're not careful with the mental health treatment, you'll be so medicated that you can't think clearly. And that's when, as a church family, we need to do intercessory type prayer and stand in the gap until somebody can break free. It's a whole spiritual formula. It's a holistic approach to dealing with mental illness. But burnout is real. You can keep going like you think you can, and finally your body will sit you down. And on the side of the road, and help is not calling AAA, now you're in a facility because you did not stop and acknowledge that you're human. And it's like I said, it's okay to talk to Jesus and a therapist. Whatever the need is to give you that balance, because life is rough and it's getting rougher. As far as the children are concerned, in the behavioral health unit, what I recognize is most of the children, mental health normally comes from exhaustion of overdoing, and it also comes from traumatic incidences. So most of these children have either been sexually abused, they're in there for suicidal thoughts, they're cutting themselves, you name it, our young people are experiencing it because they don't have an outlet to talk. They need to be talked with and not talked to. They don't need just giving instructions. They don't know how to figure it out. And whether we want to accept it or not, generationally, our teaching of our raising our children is different. We handle things different. They're blind and on their own. And I tell my own children, I said, you talking to your friends, and they don't know any more than you do. So you've got to, it's all about relationship. When I'm in the hospital, when I first went into the unit, the children were like, kind of standoffish. And so I just kept being persistent. And what children need is persistent and consistent relationships. So the next, like about the third trip I'm in there, they can't remember my name, and they wouldn't talk to me before, but now they're like, hey, church lady. And I'm like, hey. And then they're coming, can I have a hug? And we don't realize that touch is critical. Adults need touch. Children need a hug and embrace, not just the chastisement. Life is a balance of things, and whatever it takes, please do not have too much pride to ask for help or recognize when you're about to be parked on the side of the road.
Yeah, very invaluable information. Thank you, everybody. Let's get everyone on hands. That's some good, really, some good stuff. Really good stuff. We got one more, honey. We want to take one more.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody.
Okay.
This is a question, a quick question. And it's against a background that I believe many adults, many professionals are, I don't want to say enslaved, but are in shackles to their profession, in that their supervisors, they tend to demand a lot from them, and many persons, sometimes you find yourself in the situation, you are going to the job because you want to pay the bills. You're not enjoying it anymore, and you can't quit, because if you quit, there's no food on the table, or you might find yourself on the street. You know, I was a part of a profession where after a while, you know, many teachers were, where I'm from, many teachers were dying on the job. They were fainting, they were having heart attack, and I believe it's because of this burnt out. Many persons are in that situation, you know, and don't even realize that it is they're being burnt out. That is my experience, you know, and luckily, my wife is also a teacher, and so I am able to quit and do something else. That is not teaching, you know, not what I'm trained for, but although in society it might seem a little lower substance art, but doing something else, it actually saves my life. You know, so but my question is, for persons who are in that situation, you're in a job, you know, you're not enjoying it anymore, or you might enjoy it, but you have, as I said, burnt out, you have seen everything. What else is there for you to see? And you're just going there for, just to get the paycheck, you know? And there's no room for, much scope for growth, or your individuality, you know, creativity and so forth. But you can't leave. What advice would you give to persons like those?
Well, the first thing that pops to my mind when I think about professional burnout is looking at what are your options. And so you're coming from a place of privilege if you are able to say, I can leave, my spouse can hold down the house for the next couple of months while I'm looking for something else. You can also look at, well, I have to pour into myself. I have to figure out a way to find my satisfaction outside of my job. If I look in this room right now, okay, let's look at it this way. You can look at me, yes, I'm a psychologist, but that's not all I am. When we get to a place in which it feels like I am only my job, only have my work identity, and that's it, that's when you have to start looking at, well, what do I do outside of work? What can I do outside of work? What sort of time am I devoting to my family? What sort of time am I devoting to myself? Now, for some, it is harder than others because, you know, we have people who have to work 2 or 3 jobs, right? So it's not like it's as easy as, well, just go ahead and take a vacation. But it is important to recognize I have to pour into myself. I have to go for a walk. I have to do some journaling. I have to make some sort of change in my life that I can afford, as well as a change in my life that I can actually get my rest. Now, that's why we talk about the Sabbath the way we do. That is that time for rest. You know, it's not sleeping in. You know, sleeping in is nice. It's not just not going to work. It's taking your mind away from work. It's taking your mind and your body away from work and putting it someplace else.
Thank you for that comment, and thank you for the audience participation. I've enjoyed you guys' comments and your insights and your experience and questions, but in the essence of our time frame, we only have 40 more minutes, and we have a few more things to get through and share, and some more, another mindfulness moment as well. So right now, I'm going to direct a couple of questions to the panelists to cover the topics that we wanted to elaborate upon this afternoon. And so from this table, I'd like to ask you to share with us about grief. You know, how does grief manifest? Because a lot of times people think grief is only when a person dies. They don't acknowledge the fact that you can have other types of losses that cause you to grieve in a certain way. So could you have a comment about grief, and also what are some ways to address grief?
Sorry, we were trying to figure out who was going to say what.
We were too kind to each other, but she hasn't spoken yet.
Oh, it's okay. So grief is a very interesting topic because it is very deep. So we have complex grief. We have grief that is simple, but also with grief, we have to know that there are different stages to grief. So the first thing is recognition that something is going on. We do often think about grief as just death, but grief can also be a separation of something or a displacement of something. So if something is taken away, if something no longer exists, if we are let's say, for instance, ending a friendship, that's grief. If we are experiencing a loss, that's grief. If we are transitioning from one thing or one place to something else, that can be something that a person grieves more than just the death of something. Oftentimes when I help people to understand grief, I do it by a demonstration. So when a person first experiences grief, it is represented by a circle that takes up a large square. So if we thought about this by the projection, our grief is as big as the projection screen. But after a while, after you learn skills, it's not that the grief goes away, it's just that the ball or the pain that we feel associated with it, it starts to settle itself because you start to learn coping skills that help you with the grief. Another thing that I typically give people is called the Bill of Rights, but it is for grief. So that is something that says that you have the will to do blank. You have the will to do blank associated with grief. So if a person can understand that process, then they can also know that they have to show themselves a little bit of grace when it comes to grief.
I'd just like to add grief about things that are not, surrounding death, but more so loss. And so when we think about losing time, when we think about losing a friendship or anything like that, we have to begin to approach it. Specifically, I'm thinking about regret and losing time because that can often be associated with grief. We have to begin to approach it with clear decision making. Because when we approach it, we think that we can't get this time back, or we can't let go of this regret, or we can't, process through this thing that I'm dealing with as far as grief goes. But we have to begin to approach it from a purposeful place, which means now I'm going to make decisions that are going to be in alignment with my values for my friendships, so that maybe I won't have to go through this situation again. Now I'm going to be in alignment and make decisions that are in alignment with my purpose, so that I don't have to experience this regret associated with whatever this situation is anymore.
Thank you for sharing. Ebony, go ahead.
I know you didn't ask our table, but I also would like to say that I think it's also to acknowledge that even in instances where maybe something good is happening, you can also experience grief, right? So say you get a promotion, right? You get a promotion at work and you transition into a new position. That loss of the old position, right? You may grieve some things from there with the new responsibilities that you have to do. So I think it's important to acknowledge that even in positive situations, you can also experience a loss and might also experience grief.
Thank you for that share. And just a follow-up question. So what would you tell someone who is experiencing grief? Like what resources should they seek out?
Oh, sorry. So I think depending on like what type of loss or what the circumstances are. So oftentimes, if there is a physical loss, they lost a person that died, I might connect them to like some community resources, just so they might be able to have someone to process like what it is that they're going through, maybe to provide them, like she said, with some coping skills on how they might be able to move through their grief. I think it's also important that if a person is spiritually connected, to connect them to whatever spiritual practice it is, right? So that they can also receive comfort that way as well. What else do I do in terms of grief? I might talk to people about just the ways that they could also assist in helping to pour into themselves at that time. So whether it's connecting with your people, like your family, if it's getting out, I like to hike and stuff, right? And so doing something that makes you feel good as well.
For me as a naturopathic doctor, when we try to assess what is the root cause of the grief, we do have some therapies that we can use, and one of those therapies is homeopathic remedies. One of my favorite homeopathic remedies for certain types of grief, and this is specific to grief from disappointed love, right? So you've experienced maybe an issue with your mom in your childhood, and now it's presenting as an adult. You didn't know that you were grieving that experience as a child, but for some reason you struggle with indignation, you struggle with headaches and all these other things that come with this type of remedy. I will prescribe it according to how you present. So the way that I address grief is first I identify what type of grief it is, and then I would more than likely prescribe a homeopathic remedy, which is really cheap. They're small little pellets, and you can find this in Whole Foods. You probably, if you are into natural therapies, especially as a parent, you may have seen I think it's Zerabelli or something like that, or Highlands. They have different cough syrups and things that have a combination of homeopathic remedies, but grief, because it's so deep, like she said, and it can affect so many different body systems, I would tend to treat it with homeopathy, and that's a 3-hour assessment, and you just talking, and me getting to know you a little bit more to perfectly match you with a grief remedy.
Thank you for your share. Now, the next topic we're going to go into is suicidality. After we have that topic discussed a little bit, Tanisha will do our mindfulness moment, and we'll have a giveaway at that time. We hear in the news all the time that the suicide rates are going up. This morning at the NAMI Walk, we talked to someone about the deaths on NC State's campus. So I'd like for you guys to share a little bit from your clinical perspective what you've seen with suicides and suicide rates, and if you have anything else that we as a church community that you recommend that we do to address this kind of increase.
Typically when we think about suicide, for a lot of people, suicide is really them saying, I feel as though there is no other option. When you're starting to feel hopeless, when you're starting to feel helpless, and people start to think, well, this is my only solution. The thing about a lot of suicides that we see in America, it is a combination of no one cares and there's nothing I can do about it. The idea behind suicidality when it comes to our children and our young adults, look at the world. Look at the world around us. Look at the world that our kids are coming up in. If you were born anytime after 2001, this country's been at war your entire life. You don't have an understanding or recognition of what America looked like outside of war. So that's not distressing, and that's just your baseline. That's just where you're starting from. And then you start adding on things, and that's the other point of suicidality. It's stuff upon stuff upon stuff upon stuff, and just keeps building. And there hasn't been that sort of therapeutic release. There hasn't been that sort of therapeutic reassurance. There hasn't been that notion in your mind that it can get better. Because for so long, it's just been getting worse. And even when we think about with our college students, now the stress of if I don't get it right now, then my life is completely over. And it's not something that's new, but it's a little more heightened given the economy. Now, when we think about, well, I'm dating myself a little bit, but when I was in undergrad, I had 2.5 years before I had to pick a major. I had time to think, I had time to not play around, but I had time to explore different options. I was pre-law for a little bit. I was pre-med for a little bit. Before I got psychology, I was even engineering. So I went through all of that trying to figure out who I am. For a lot of our kids now, they don't get that same sort of freedom to figure out who I am, what I want to do. Everything is just bad. In the 24-hour news cycle, everything's bad. Twitter, bad. Reddit, bad. Like, the world just seems like it's a horrible place. And we don't have any sort of outlet in which we're able to tell our kids, it's not as bad as it looks. It's going to get better. There are ways of which things will improve, but you can't see it. So it's important as parents to give our children this space and that reassurance that as bad as life looks, this is not what it's going to be.
I remember hearing a quote. It said, "You're not tired of living, you're tired of not living." And that really, it just hit me, because I'm like, how many people are living but they're not living? And so I think the root of, what I would say the root is a lot of us don't know why we're here on this earth. We are not connected to our purpose. And so when you don't know who you are, you'll let other people tell you who you need to be. You put these expectations on yourself and it just spirals out of control. Kind of to your point, your identity gets rooted in certain things like your career, certain roles like wife, mom, student, all these things. And so when your identity is rooted in all these different roles, but you don't know really who you are and what you're supposed to do, it's easy to just want to, I won't say easy, but your mind starts to go to, I just want to give up because I don't know what I'm supposed to do, instead of, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do. This season was supposed to serve a purpose. I can move into the next season with a little bit more ease. So I think that it's very important that I'm really big into disease prevention. So this should be started early on with our children, seeing their gifts and talents, nurturing it, cultivating it, showing them what purpose that God is really placing on the inside of them, so that when they're bullied or when they're up against, hardships in life, because life is just going to be hard, they're very confident in who they are. They're not going to be moved. They're not going to be swayed. And even if they are, they'll recover. They'll be resilient, and they'll bounce back quickly. Because I think that ending your life really speaks to that identity has not been solidified. And many times it's not solidified at a very early age. And so we're seeing this stuff manifested. I mean, unfortunately, we're seeing it manifesting in young children, but we're seeing it in adults as well. And once we get what your purpose is, what is your actual identity, which is child of God, first and foremost, and operating and believing that, then I feel like we can really attack that subject holistically.
What I want to say about that, just to add to that, is that it is really important for us to know who we are, just as Christ has made us to be. One of the things that I thought about when Dr. Bree was speaking was actually something from 1 Kings chapter 19, where Elijah felt that he was not better than his ancestors, so he actually wanted to commit suicide. Right? But there was an angel that came to him, and he took a nap, and he told him to get up and to eat. And then he did eat, but then he went back to sleep. So there was another angel that came to him and told him to get up because the road ahead was going to be long. So even though there is this aspect of suicide, not necessarily saying that God will come to us and we get sleep and we eat and then we're good to go and we never think about, those thoughts again, I think it's important as parents to educate children on the fact that it doesn't speak very heavily about just there's no direct thing about mental health in the Bible, but there are those aspects that say, okay, but what about mental illness in general? All the times that it talks about anxiety in the Bible, all the times it talks about how we feel low or depression, or just talking about those who followed after Jesus who also felt that way. So I think about that, but also how Paul had urged us anyways to be in a space where we can manifest certain things, how we can speak things in a certain way, and if we speak them in those ways, then that's what they're going to be, right? So if we could teach our children those things, then therefore they will have an understanding of where to start, but also where to go, because they need to know that God loves us. But if we're not teaching them those things because we see the Bible just for us as adults, sometimes it's because we don't know the word enough for ourselves. So if we could learn it and then develop it, then we can also speak those things.
That's some really good points. I wanted to add to based on those comments, a very, very important topic. The pervasiveness of social media and technology as we know it, kids having access to everything. The world is literally at their fingertips, so they can really do some damages with just a smartphone. So, and we've heard YouTube, kids have developed anxiety over YouTube. So in your practices, have you seen parents who are seeking counseling for their children because they feel like they are being addicted or develop some form of anxiety over social media or seeking to find identity? So those individuals who call themselves influencers, so are you seeing a lot of those things regarding children?
Not so much parents bringing children, because I typically work with college students, but college students coming in thinking everybody else is good and I'm the only one suffering. You know, you look at Instagram, especially Instagram, you see people giving you their best self. They're taking time to put on their makeup, and they're taking time to make sure everything is right in the background, and they're taking time to do all of that for this one little picture, or they're only going to show you, my life is good, I'm at the club, I got all these bands, and I'm just living it. You don't know the reality. No one knows their reality because they're not sharing that part. So you have students looking around like, that's like I'm supposed to be living. And I'm not for some reason. Conversely, a couple of years ago, would have students doing the exact same thing. I'm going to the club, I'm partying, and the whole 9 yards in the middle of the pandemic. And I'm like, I'm supposed to sit next to you in class tomorrow? I saw what you were doing last night. Oh, I don't want to be around you. You know, so, but at the same time, it's still cultivated images. You're still looking at it from a perspective of, it's fake. We watch TV, and we know TV is fake. But when you look at the internet, when you look at Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, whatever, you don't have that same sort of recognition that they're giving you an image that's not the reality.
I think a lot of times with social media, as he said, people give you the highlight reel, right? So you don't necessarily see the bad. But I think in terms of suicidality and suicidal thoughts, that it is important when it comes to children as well as adults, all people, to normalize that life is hard. And every now and again, right, even people who have never experienced any previous symptoms of anything else might have the thought that this is really tough. And you know what? I wouldn't be upset if I didn't wake up tomorrow, right? Like, that happens. That is something that when people are under stress can happen to any of us. And I think it's important to talk about those things, to have those conversations so that people feel comfortable when they're much more distressed to be able to come out and talk to you, right? So to just normalize, life is hard as it is, right? And there are many things that are gonna continue to happen, and sometimes you might feel like I can't go on, but let's figure out what it is that we can do. And I want you to always know you can talk to me about it so that I can support you. So I think it's important to provide space for people to talk about how they're feeling, as well as to just normalize, like, some of the things that we go through. Everybody goes through it.
So we're going to have our mindfulness moment. Thank you each for your comments. Before Tanisha comes up to give us our, I guess it might be our last mindfulness moment because our time draws nigh, I would like to ask you guys behind me, if someone is in crisis and telling you that they feel so hopeless, they have a plan of how they would end their life, and they're intending to end their life at some point in the near future, how would you respond to that? What number would you call? So what would you tell them, 988 or 911, panelists?
988.
Woohoo! Y'all heard it from the experts. So what number, who can say it the loudest, would you call? 988. Okay. So Tanisha's going to make her way up front. I'm going to give the lady who drove from Winston-Salem a Panera Bread gift card for coming this long way. Thank you. And we have a Fayetteville attendee, so you'll have to come back because I don't know if Happy and Hell is in down that way in Fayetteville. And Tanisha's going to lead us in our next mindfulness moment.
Hi, everyone. How are we doing?
Hi.
Do we need to get up and stretch? How are we feeling? All right, stand up, everybody. Stand up, stand up. All right, this is actually not part of the mindful moment, so you can go ahead and sit back down. I'm sorry. All right, you can go ahead and sit back down now that you've stretched out a little bit. All right. Okay, so sometimes when we're feeling overwhelmed, we're feeling stressed, anxious, angry, we try the breathing. The breathing, it may work, it may not work. We might need a little something else, right? So there's another concept called grounding, and it's a similar concept to being mindful. It's about becoming more present and being in the moment, okay? And so there's a couple different ways you can, a couple different grounding techniques you can use. You can use a change in temperature, right? So you can, stick your hand in some cold water or an ice bucket, or with some of my clients, I'll tell them, freeze an orange, and then, when you're feeling stressed out, you can get it out, and you can use it kind of as a stress ball, so you're getting the tension, but you're also getting the temperature. But there's another thing that you can do, and it's this 5-4-3-2-1 grounding technique, and this is about using your senses, right? So once again, we were talking about when we're stressed out, our body, our autonomic nervous system just kind of goes. It does its own thing, right? And so if we want to kind of regain some, control, if you can use that word, we can get our senses back online to get back a sense of control over our breathing, over what's going on in our body. And so it starts with, you can see there, so it starts with looking around and acknowledging 5 things that you can see. So I'm going to ask you to do it with me as we go through this exercise. So looking around the sanctuary, what are 5 things that we can see? You can just yell out. Flowers. Okay, that's number 1. Flags. The screen. Projector. Lights. Panelists. Okay, all right, I think we got 5. So we're gonna go to 4. 4 is things we can touch, okay? So just looking around you, what are 4 things you can touch? The water bottle, envelope, my skin, the person next to you, if they want you to. What else? The chair, all right, that's 4 things. 3 things that you can hear. Me, all right, that's great. Anything else? Breathing. What else? Talking. Air conditioner. Buzzing from the lights. Okay, 2 things that you can smell. What can you smell? Perfume. Flowers. Cologne. Deodorant. Amen. At this time of day, it might be something else. All right. And then the last thing is 1 thing that you can taste. Your saliva, I guess. Candy, water. All right. And so you can use this when you're kind of feeling a little bit stressed or, once again, angry, anxious. And it can help to kind of bring you back to the present moment. Thank you.
But the last thing that we're going to talk about is going to be on the topic of resiliency and overcoming. Now, our children's staff have alerted me that they're getting a little weary, so our children might come in as we are talking about that topic, but we saved kind of the most optimistic portion of our session today for the end, right? Yes. So I'm going to ask the audience, who can remember what was the first technique for relaxation and calming that Tanisha said? Do y'all remember? Breathing. Okay, and then she just taught us, was that a grounding activity? Yes. Grounding technique. So my question for the panelists today is, what are some ways that you counsel your clients to build up their resilience, their resilience toolbox, resiliency? And you can tell us what is resilience, because we hear that a lot, but a lot of people don't understand what it means.
Well, one thing I like to tell students in particular is you never fail. You either succeed or you learn. The idea behind that is no one's going to be perfect. You are going to fall down. But just as we saw this morning, it's not so much about falling down, but it's about being able to get up from that. If you feel as though I'm a failure and my life is over, it's much harder to get up than if you were to say, I just learned something. I can use that as I move forward.
Thank you.
I would say priming the body, giving it the nutrients that it needs. When you're already coming from a depleted state, when you're stressed out, it's hard to be resilient. You can't really recover quickly because you're depleted. But when you're proactive and you're giving your body all the nutrients, like when we're under stress, the body starts to release stress hormone, and what's the first things that start to deplete? Vitamin C, fighting infection, we getting sick. Like, the body is doing what it needs to do to be resilient, but our mind is not catching up. So I would say what I often tell my patients and clients is, give your body what it needs. Is it magnesium? That's like one of the key nutrients that's depleted under stress. So many of us likely are depleted in magnesium because we're all likely very stressed. Vitamin D, many of us are deficient in vitamin D, but that's been shown to be very important with maintaining hormonal regulation, mental health, cognition, immune system function, so many different things. But if you're, again, depleted, how can you be resilient? So beef up on your nutrients so that when the time does come, because it's going to come, you're already ready, and then you're already just supplementing or getting it through your diet and nutrition. So that's how I would advise my patients.
I'm of the belief that the only way we can access resiliency is when we choose to remove denial out of the room. And so that looks like accepting whatever place you may be in at whatever moment you may be in, but not accepting that this is going to be for the rest of my life, but this is where I'm at. Because when we begin to deny, we go into a shell almost, where we don't want to face others, we don't want to face ourselves, and so we have a difficult time seeing where we can be in the future. So that is what we have to do, kick denial out of the room and choose acceptance so that you can now access whatever that future is supposed to be, which is going to be hopeful.
I would say, and I think this is because this is a part of what I do in my practice, but I would say that our resiliency is a result of what we believe we can do with help that is outside of ourselves. Mm-hmm. Now, if you are a person that is typically spiritual, then that means our resiliency is actually based within our faith. Mm-hmm. So for me as a person, I try to inform people that God's strength is perfect within our weaknesses. So if we are able to see that there is help there and we start to build our faith, then what that says is that as it says in the word, Jesus said, "Surely I say unto you, if you have faith as a mustard seed, you can tell this mountain to move from here to there, and it will do so, and nothing will be impossible." So if we can think a little bit more beyond just what we do in the natural and think of it more in the supernatural, then we can literally do all things.
Yeah. Thank you for that. So would you correlate resiliency? So to get to that level, would you say it takes some form of bravery for you to recognize, look, I'm not my best self, or I'm not where I need to be, right? Would you say you correlate that with bravery in order for you to get to that place?
I think in terms of, I agree, yes. I think for me, resiliency means sort of like your ability to bounce back from things, right? And if you are being open and honest, right, maybe something didn't go as you wanted to, right? You didn't have the outcome that you were looking for. But I think it's important to acknowledge the work that you did, that you tried, and sure, this was the outcome, but what happens like if you don't try again, right? Or what will happen, like what's the worst that could happen, but what's the best that could happen, right? And so you always have to be willing to try again, right? Recognize like where you might have went wrong that first time, and incorporate things that you can do better. But I think always having like the mindset that you can try again, like you tried, you can try again.
Amen. Thank you for that. You guys each have provided such a wealth of information to us this afternoon. We are so grateful and so appreciative. So the final thing that I have to ask, because we had it on our flyer and I'm so thorough and complete, I have to ask, is overcoming. Just that last part about overcoming, because we talked about resiliency as we're wrapping up, and not everyone is a naturally resilient person, and you seem to suggest that we have to work at it and reframe our thoughts when things don't go the way we expect or desire, so that we can build that area of resiliency. But go ahead, Ebony. No, go ahead. Oh, I was just going to ask, but before we finish off and have our closing prayer, closing remarks, I just wondered if you guys had some thoughts about overcoming. Maybe you've worked with a client that you felt met that criteria of really overcoming. What does that look like for when you're an overcomer?
So for a lot of times for me, having conversations with people, especially people who are involved in the church, and talking about ways to overcome, like I recall learning faith without works is dead, right? And so it's not important just to, it's not good enough just to have faith, right? You have to also be willing to do some kind of work, right? So you have faith that God is going to do what he said he would do, but what are you doing to get what it is that you're asking for, right? And so that's where overcoming comes in, right? Like remembering, I believe God is going to do this for me, but what is it that I'm willing to do to get what it is that I'm asking for as well, right? And making sure that you remember that you can't just have faith, you got to do something too. So it's a teamwork, right? Partnership. Let's do it together so that we can get what we need.
I would like to add to what she said. I agree everything that she said, and also as it pertains to overcoming, you have to have self-awareness. You have to know where you stand and what it is that you're trying to overcome. You have to be comfortable with confrontation. A lot of people are not really interested in confronting the thing that is in their way. And so there's this little song that my son always sings when we're going, it's like, we're going on a bear hunt. Got my binoculars, and then like there's something that's in the way. And so let's say it was a staircase. You can't go over it, you can't go under it, you just gotta climb up it. And so you just have to really identify what it is that's in front of you that you're trying to overcome. And once you realize what it is, you have to identify how can you really attack it, not necessarily attack it, but really how can you face it and overcome it is a strategy in itself. You can't use water to put out every fire, right? You can't use glasses to see clear with everything. Some things have to have, you gotta have an education about the tools needed to address what it is that you're overcoming. And so that comes with self-awareness, where I stand with what I have and how I can actually face this thing. And then getting partners in that journey saying, hey, well, this particular tool can put out a fire, while this particular tool can beat something into the ground. So having someone who can identify the tools needed to overcome is very important to actually getting over it.
I don't want to belabor the point too long, but Dr. Jones kind of hit it on the head a few moments ago. Don't play yourself. Prepare in advance. And the thing about it, as Pastor was preaching this morning about getting your sleep. So, for example, I'll tell a story about myself. When I was in undergrad, I got a C- in the class, but it was my major. So technically I failed it by 2 points. I'm all like, man, Dr. Clark failed me. Did Dr. Clark fail me? No, I earned that. Don't play yourself. I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't studying like I should. I wasn't proofreading my work. That was on me. Sometimes you got to be brave and own your stuff. So what did I learn from that? I learned, I was playing myself, man. Over here trying to work 2 jobs, and I'm like, okay, let that class slide and focus on this other stuff. I didn't need that other stuff. I needed this class. So I had to learn from that. And don't blame myself. I actually studied the next semester. Yes, and that's the point. Oftentimes when we keep thinking it's the worst, it's over, I can't do this. You can overcome anything through Christ, right? You can also overcome a lot of your own foolishness by focusing on what you're supposed to be doing. Yes, so again, am I actually giving myself what I need? Am I actually doing what I'm supposed to do? Or am I saying, you know what, I can go ahead and watch this show. I can go ahead and do an extra hour of this, and I can get to this other stuff later. I don't need to work out today. I don't need to. Exactly. I don't need. Because I'm going to be all right. It's little things can build, and they can build into something positive, or they can build into something negative. But it's those little steps. Just as I'm sorry, the other doctor. I'm sorry, what's your name?
Dr. Key.
Dr. Key was saying, step by step. You get over that thing step by step. And we can do these little steps every day. So we overcome every day.
Yeah, and I'll just say a small thing about that is that we're always overcoming because there's always going to be an obstacle. So the steps that we're taking, like you were saying, Dr. Key, it's going to work in one setting that it may not work in another. It doesn't mean that it's not effective. It just means that in that space it's not. I just told somebody earlier something that I think of when I think about mental health, how we overcome, how we do things is we are very familiar with Psalms 23, but we are not familiar with Psalms 23. Because if we really look at it, if we really read it line by line, we would see that that in itself is talking about how we overcome things. So.
Amen. So I neglected to acknowledge any mental health agencies or clinicians that are represented in the audience. Is there anyone who'd like to share who are visiting for the program today? If you're a mental health clinician or agency in the community that you'd like to share, where you're from? Okay, if not, that's fine. I was told that there would be some here, so I just want to make sure I'm not overlooking, recognizing anyone. And actually I have 2 people have questions, and then we will do closing remarks by the pastor and closing prayer.
Well, we talk about a lot of things today, so I am so grateful. I've learned a lot from all of you, and I really appreciate your expertise in your respective fields. That's really good stuff. But now, I guess very quickly, and you all can just go down the line, how these individuals that's looking at you right now, how do they, if they need help, right? We know that they can call a phone number, but if they need something specific that tailored to their need, because not everybody's the same, how can they find you, and what resources you think they can tap into that's in the community? Very quickly, each one of you can say what if you have something.
How can you find me? Anybody that is interested, I work with specifically women who deal with anxiety, depression, life transitions, and as Amanda would say, she's a trauma therapist. So anything related to trauma is my jam. So you would find me at www.pivotalbreakthroughcounseling.com.
You can find my group practice at lwcwellness.org, and we have a great round of professionals who you could be able to work with. I also offer a free virtual safe space every last Sunday of the month for women, and we talk about various things from friendships to forgiveness to all types of things. So it's every last Sunday. So the next one will be next Sunday. It's virtual, and you can get enrolled in that by just sending an email to hello@IamBeyondBrokenness.com.
And I'm Dr. Akila Praler, and you can get in contact with me at drpraler.heals@gmail.com. And if you want that information, I can certainly come to you later on so we can make sure you get it right. But I focus on, again, that's weight management and stress management, and a lot of us deal with it, so I can work with a lot of different types of people, no matter what type of disorders you come with. But if weight and stress management is your main focus, that's what I can focus on and help you with.
I'm Ebony Nolan, a licensed clinical social worker, and I'm moving back to New York, you guys, so you probably won't want to connect with me, but if you did, you could reach me at Nolan, my last name, .ebony@gmail.com.
Dr. Brianna Jones, you can find me at www.wellnesshealth.com. And again, I work with women typically with PCOS, but also insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, and heart disease, and its derivatives.
My name is Randolph Brooks, and you can reach me at www.brookspsych.com. You'll also reach my wife at www.brookspsych.com. And we both work with individuals dealing with transitions, especially young adults, fresh out of college or going into college, and other things as well. Go ahead and add on.
I'll add a couple things. I'll sit here. So we also have an emphasis in DEI work and individuals that are dealing with microaggressions at their workplace. And so in addition to therapy services, we also provide consultation and workshops as well.
Okay, I'm going to jump back to when we were talking about suicide. So my question to the panel is, for example, Miss Universe and Twitch had committed suicide, right? And they considered these two individuals to be highly functional. My question is to you, have you dealt with those type of patients? What type of issues are help that you offer those type of patients? And is there something that you can offer us to be able to pick that out while we are among people who are what considered to be highly functional?
A couple of things when we're thinking about someone who may be experiencing suicidal ideation or anything like that, it's really important to directly ask the question. But that's hard. I do that for a living, and it's still hard. As Jean was pointing out earlier, you're not looking for somebody who's like, you know what, you look a particular way. No, because as you just mentioned, these individuals, they appear highly functioning, but we don't know what's going on behind closed doors. We don't know what's going on at home, at work, or anywhere else. So since we're not all mental health professionals, I would just say it's important to just show someone that you care. It's important to show someone that I'm listening and I'm here for you. So you want to make sure you have this open dialogue in which you can let them know. You can talk to me about anything. The thing about that is you have to be in the space for that. So have the time, have the availability, and again, remember 988. Because if someone does say, yeah, I am thinking about that, you need to know what your resources are. And for most of us, it will just be 988.
Thank you, Dr. Brooks. Oh, did I have not, someone else want to answer her question?
I just want to say very quickly that in that, what you're talking about when someone is functioning in that way, oftentimes we are saying that we need to know what the signs look like. But if we're talking about Twitch who did not show any signs, who was making videos and then he went about committing the suicide, sometimes it's just creating that space that say, am I creating a space that is comfortable for a person to show me anything regardless of what it is? So it's not him not showing the signs, it's the outward things that say, what was it that didn't present as safe for him to do so? Especially for African American men who very well do not show their emotions very easily. So that's what I would say. But it's like he said, just being able to ask the right questions and letting that space be open for them to freely discuss that.
I think even if you don't, as they said, right, you want to ask questions, and it's okay if you feel like you don't have the right questions. More important, listen, right? More important than asking questions. Sure, you want to ask them questions and see if maybe they have a plan, but I think most people just want to be heard. They don't feel like people are actually listening to them. And I think it could make a world of difference for somebody to really have someone that's just sitting there. You need me to help you vent? Like, what is it that you're looking for from this? You just want to talk? Okay, I'm here, right? But allowing them to know that you're willing to listen, you're willing to be there for them, I think is really great as well.
I'd like to say that last year when I was preparing for the NAMI walk, it was trending to ask people, are you okay? In your immediate circle of people you interact with, you create kind of automatically a little bit safer space when you ask, are you okay? And you genuinely care and you're listening. People know if you really care or not. You could be a stranger, but they can tell that you really care about them. So you need to think about that as you're interacting with other people who you don't know if they're highly functioning people struggling with mental illness significantly, but they look great on the outside and seem to be like a rock star at everything that they do. You know, the first step is asking, are you okay? And being prepared to listen and continue to follow up. And maybe at some point when people are suffering, they'll feel comfortable sharing. So I want to say again, thank you guys for staying and engaging with us. I do want to know who's visiting Gethsemane for the first time. I already know the three people I gave gift cards, so y'all don't put y'all hand up. Who else is visiting Gethsemane for the very first time? This gentleman gets a gift card to Coco Bistro. And for our panelists, I'd like to thank you guys for taking the time to come to our church and give us 2.5 hours of your time. You know how much their time is worth hourly? Hourly is expertise. So we can't compare to what you're worth, but we're going to give you a small gift, okay? So I have one for each of you guys. My husband will pass them out. And the last thank you that I'd like to give, of course, I'm grateful for all of you taking the time to come and support the program. I hope that you will come and support other programs that we have, because Dr. Jones and I vibe quite well. We have a spirit for educating the community and bringing resources to our local community. So this is the first of other initiatives down the line. But the person that I really want to thank is Pastor Humphreys, because he told me, Tawana, this is your day. You guys can plan it and do it however you want. This is your day. This is your mental health day. And this man probably is tired because he preached that great sermon about how important sleep is, and he ain't had a nap yet, okay? So anyway, we praise you and thank you for this day, this time. I appreciate you, Pastor.
I was looking for my envelope. That's all. When the pastor says this is your day, he means you planned it, and I just put my name on it. Amen. Amen. No, but listen, seriously, this has been wonderful. This is Black excellence. Can you come and say amen, somebody? I mean, truly glad. We ought to put our hands together for them. Thank you all so much. So much. We appreciate it. And a lot of times I think I heard one of our parents say this is your second event, and so we know You almost all of you, your time is so valuable, and we do appreciate that. And so tonight, we know, and we don't want to be insensitive for you, we know that there's someone now who is probably struggling with some things that we shared today.
Yes.
And we believe that Gethsemane is a safe space here, and we do these programs here to let you know that we have resources for you. So again, we say thank you. Let's put our hands together for our toast tonight. Tawana and John Williams. Now let's all stand to our feet as we prepare to go. We thank you all so much for what I want to thank whoever did the food today. Let's put our hands together for everybody, our staff, as well as our media team staying over. Everybody who's staying over needs a nap. Amen. So let's get some to get home. Let's pray together. Father, we say thank you, Jesus, so much for this summit, Lord. We thank you so much, Lord, for these individuals behind me who spend their time and efforts helping make people whole. We know, Lord, the ultimate power comes from you. So, Lord, be with them and their endeavors, the businesses that they are a part of, God. We just pray that only success will go from here, Lord. Bless the heroes of God, and we know the ultimate goal is to see you on earth, and to be whole down here is to get us ready for up there. And so we say thank you, Jesus. And you're going to be in? Amen. Give me everybody.
I have one final announcement. Leslie Johnson is going to go out to give bags of food to the homeless. For those who are local who'd like to join her in that endeavor, she's about to go out now. If you want to go with her to give bags of food out to the homeless. Don't forget you have a notepad in your bags if you want to get their contact information and a pen in your bag.
Because even from like a